It's not yours. And honestly, I'm not even sorry. Those were the words my wife said to me on a Tuesday evening in our kitchen, standing 3 feet away from me like I was a stranger she was inconveniencing. Just like that, no trembling, no collapse, just Rita, composed, calculating, already somewhere else in her mind while I was still standing in the wreckage of mine. My name is Jude Bellion. I'm a civil engineer. I build things for a living. Bridges, load-bearing structures, foundations meant to hold weight that most people never think about. I have spent my entire career making sure things don't fall apart. I am terrible, it turns out, at applying that same skill to my own life. It started with a gym bag, her blue one, slumped against the couch leg. I was looking for my car keys. She had a habit of tossing them into whatever bag was closest. I unzipped it without thinking. Keys were right there, but my hand kept moving. Under a crumpled towel, folded in half like it could hide itself, was a white pregnancy test. Positive. Dated 3 weeks prior. I sat down on the floor, not the couch, the floor, and I didn't move for 4 minutes. When the front door opened, I was still sitting there. Please, before I continue, kindly like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories. Rita walked in carrying a smoothie, cheeks flushed from the cold. She set it on the counter, kicked off her shoes, turned, and froze. I raised the test slowly. Her smoothie slid off the counter. Neither of us reached for it. I asked her one question, just one. Is it mine? She didn't answer immediately. That pause, 3 seconds, maybe 4, lasted longer than our entire marriage. Jude, it's complicated. I said her name once, flat and quiet, and asked again. She looked at the floor. She never said no. She didn't have to. I'm an engineer. I read the silence between measurements for a living. The absence of a yes is its own answer. Precise, load-bearing, irrefutable. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, drank a full glass of water, set the glass down gently, the way my father taught me. Not because things deserved gentleness in that moment, but because I did. Then I walked upstairs. Rita stood at the bottom of the staircase, hand on the railing, not moving up or down. She could hear me moving around up there. What she couldn't tell yet was whether I was packing for myself or for her. It was her things. Every single one. I moved through our bedroom with the same calm I use on job sites. Systematic, deliberate, no wasted motion. The red dress from my company Christmas party, the green one from our first anniversary, perfumes lined up on her vanity like a small skyline. I folded everything the way you fold something you once loved. Not throwing, not destroying, just removing. My father's voice lived in the back of my chest like a second heartbeat. He'd said it once when I was 7 years old, standing in the doorway watching my mother leave with nothing but her purse and another man's patience. He turned to me, calm as weather, and said, "We don't beg anyone to stay, son. Not ever. Pack up what's yours and walk forward." He died when I was 26, but I heard him clearly that night. Rita appeared in the doorway. "You can't do this," she said. Her voice cracked, not from guilt, but from the realization that I wasn't going to fight for her. That quiet refusal to beg frightened her more than any argument would have. I zipped the second suitcase, looked at her directly. "Somewhere safe," I said. I typed a name into my GPS that I hadn't searched in 2 years. Not because I'd been thinking about him, but because he was the only logical answer to a question I was suddenly asking. Troy Ashford, Rita's ex-husband, the man she'd described as cold, emotionally absent, a beautiful museum of a man with no warmth inside. I'd believed every word. I'd had no reason not to. I drove across town with 2 suitcases in my trunk and her gym bag on the passenger seat. At 9:17 p.m., I rang his doorbell. Troy opened the door and looked at the bags before he looked at me. He was quieter than I expected, steadier. He said my name like he already knew it, which I suppose he did. I said his. We stood on that lit porch in the cold, 2 men who had loved the same woman, sizing each other up without hostility, just the heavy recognition of shared circumstance. "Pregnant," I said, "not mine." He closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, there was no satisfaction in them, just exhaustion. The deep, worn-out exhaustion of a man hearing a sentence he had memorized years ago. Troy stepped aside. I carried the bags in, set them in the hallway, and looked around. Clean house, single coffee mug on the kitchen counter, a guest room down the hall with the door slightly open, cream walls, unchanged, like a room waiting for something it couldn't name. I understood something in that quiet house that I hadn't expected to understand. Troy had never moved on, not fully. He'd rebuilt around the wound instead of through it. As I turned to leave, he said it, the sentence that stopped my hand on the door handle. "She told you I was emotionally unavailable, didn't she?" I didn't turn around, not immediately. I just stood there, holding the door handle, feeling the specific weight of a truth arriving after it was no longer useful. Then I turned, and Troy told me everything. He told me she had left him, not the other way around. That she was already seeing Leon when she filed the divorce papers. That he'd found a hotel receipt. That he'd never screamed, never made a scene, just quietly signed where he was told and moved across town. He said it all without anger, just clarity, the kind that takes years to arrive and costs everything to earn. I sat down without being invited to. Troy sat across from me. Two men, 9:30 at night, untangling a web neither of us wove. He told me Rita was gifted at reframing, that she could take the true shape of a story and sand it down until it fit the version of herself she needed you to believe. He wasn't bitter saying it, just precise, the way people get when they've had years to process something that once destroyed them. I thought about Sandra, Rita's mother. 2 weeks before our wedding, she'd pulled me aside at the rehearsal dinner, glass of wine in hand, a look in her eyes that had nothing celebratory in it, and said quietly, "Don't give her everything, Jude. Keep something for yourself. Always." I'd laughed it off the next morning with Ray. I'd called it mother-daughter tension. I wished with my whole chest that I had listened. Troy and I shook hands at the door. On the drive home, my phone lit up with 14 texts from Rita. I didn't open any of them. It was the 15th message, from a number I didn't recognize, that made me pull over on the side of the road. The text read, "I know you found out. It wasn't personal. Rita and I have history that was never really finished. I just want to be involved with my child. I'd appreciate if we could be adults about this. Leon Price." I read it twice, then a third time. Wasn't personal. He had burned my marriage to the ground and was requesting civility, like a man asking to be excused after stepping on your foot. I didn't reply. I saved the number, took a screenshot, and drove home. The house was quiet in a way that had weight to it. Her side of the closet, bare. The vanity, cleared. The ceramic leaf dish she kept her rings in while she slept was gone too, but her perfume still hung in the bedroom, faint and stubborn, the way a room holds someone who has already left. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened the ring box I'd kept since the proposal. Inside, the placeholder ring I'd used when I asked her, engraved, "Finally found." I set it face down on the nightstand. The next morning, Ray knocked on my door holding a newspaper, not to share news, to show me something on page 6, a photo. Grainy, taken from across the street or a neighbor's porch. Me, on Troy's doorstep, 2 suitcases visible, Troy at the door. Posted to the neighborhood Facebook group at 11 p.m. the night before. By 8 a.m., 200 comments. By noon, someone had connected all the dots, and the full rough outline of what happened was circulating through the entire community. My phone rang continuously. My mother, my aunt, 3 coworkers, Pastor Dennis. I answered only one call. My mother, Grace. I told her everything. She went silent, 30 full seconds of silence, and then she said, "Your father would be proud of how you handled yourself." That was the only moment I cried. Standing in my kitchen, coffee maker beeping, crying quietly while the rest of the world was loud outside my windows. Meanwhile, Rita arrived at Troy's house to find her bags still on the porch. He hadn't brought them inside. She rang the doorbell. Troy opened the door, looked at her for a long moment and said, "I think you should call Leon." Then he closed the door. She called Leon. He didn't answer. She called again, and again. By the 4th hour, his number was disconnected entirely. Not blocked, disconnected, and Leon Price had vanished the way certain men vanish when consequences arrive. Rita sat on Troy's porch steps in the autumn cold, her suitcases around her. Sandra arrived 20 minutes later. Someone had called her. She looked at her daughter on those steps and said nothing. She had promised herself years ago she wouldn't say "I told